This is a quick solution to lab number 3. Lab number 3 was an online test. At the end of the test, there was a question to do a simple little program that would call a method that says get username and call another method that would say send greeting. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to create a new project here, and it'll be an application. And I'm going to just call it lab 3. So the first thing I want to point out is when we're working with NetBeans in particular, or any IDE, you're going to see these sort of templated comments. It's not appropriate to keep those in your code. I mean, they're really just there to give you little hints on how to use NetBeans. This first one here, to change the license header, choose license headers, right? It's giving you specific information about changing your headers. So let's get rid of that. And then I could add information here. I could say, this program will simulate the requirements for lab 3, a simple program and I'll keep in my author. So this information here, it says @param args the comment line. That's not appropriate to keep because it's not really saying anything, right? It's not telling us what the program will do. Now in the requirements for lab 3, it said that the main method should look like this. So the first thing is, when you're programming, you need to become consistent with following the agreed upon standards. So if the requirements tell us that we need to use a method called getUsername, then we need to make sure that we have a method that's called getUsername. Conversely, if we have a method that's called sendGreeting and you're supposed to pass that username in, we need to pass that username in. So let's look at our first one here. It's getUsername. So whenever you're programming, be sure that you always put a short description of what your method will do before the code. Okay. This syntax that I'm using right here is actually it automatically reads into something called Java docs, and what that allows is for you to, if you're building bigger pieces of code, or if you're building several classes that you'll integrate together, this allows automatic documentation to be created for your code. It also allows when you call some of the methods from your class, you'll actually get to see a description of what each method is doing. This can be very helpful when you're building larger products. So this method will prompt the user to enter their name. It doesn't need to be a lengthy description, just very short and sweet as to what the method will do. So it's going to be a public method. We're calling it from a static context, so we're going to make it static. And it's going to return a string. It should return the user's name, which is data type string. So I'm going to say get username. So all methods, right? So we've got, they either have to be public or private. They're either going to be static or not. If you're calling it from a static method, then it's going to be a static method. This is our return type. So we're going to get a name, right? So that's a string data type. And we have to call it getUsername. And we have to include the opening and closing brackets along with opening and closing braces. Okay. So in order to get the username, I'm going to use a scanner object. Okay. So the scanner object allows us to read from the keyboard, or any input stream for that matter, but in this case we're just going to use it for our keyboard. So I've decided to give it a name of keyboard, and then we have to tell our user what it is we want them to tell us. So I'm going to say, please enter your name. And you see I gave a colon here and a space. If I didn't do that, when the person starts typing their name, it's going to be right after the E, and it looks a little odd. And then I'm just going to say return whatever information they gave us from the keyboard. Okay, so now we have a method that returns a string, and if you really want to complete your Javadoc comment, you would say at return Okay, so the next method we need to build is the send greeting method. So you'll see I'm putting a couple spaces in between my methods. That just helps when you're reading the code. It makes it a lot easier to see where each method starts and stops. So here I'm going to say this method receives a string, receives the user's name as a string, and displays okay, so that's all that we're going to do in this method. So I'm going to say public static. Now in this case, I'm not going to return anything to my main method. See, here I just call this method and it'll display it to the screen. I don't return anything back. So the appropriate thing here, the return type is void, meaning return nothing. And it has to be called send greeting, and I'm going to pass in a string that is the user name. Now, I could call this, username, I could call it user, I could call it whatever I like. The big thing here is that when I go to use it, I have to be consistent with whatever I've called it. So in this case, we're just going to print to the screen system.out.print hello, and I'm going to pass in the user. Okay, so let's run our program. There we go. So we have a successful program. We're following all the best practices. We have descriptions of each of our methods, and each method is just trying to do one small discrete thing, and this allows our main method to be very, very compact as well. I hope this helps. We'll talk to you soon.